Okay, Lenny Abrahamson, congratulations on your Oscar nomination. When you first came aboard this project, did you ever in your wildest dreams expect for it to become this major awards contender?
No, I mean, I knew it was. It's based on a great novel, which has which has a following, and I think I knew it could be a really powerful film. But it would be impossible to predict this. I think as we went and seeing Brie and Jake work together and beginning to sort of put the movie together, you could see something special was happening. But I don't think I would ever have anticipated this. I mean, maybe in a kind of fantasy football sort of way, but not really.
Well, let's go back to the beginning. How did you become involved in the project? What about it spoke to you?
So I read the novel in 2011, and I was a parent of like 3 years standing, 3.5 years at that point, little boy, and then another little very small baby girl. So I've been thinking a lot about the experience of being a parent and the intensity of it and the amazingness of it and the challenges of it. And then I read this novel, which was such an extraordinary exploration of all those things, and it's such an original way in as well, because she took us, Emma Donoghue, the author, took a situation which would normally be mined for its grimness and its horror and turned it into a kind of a celebration of that parent-child bond. But
Mhm.
I think it was a combination of the emotional effect of the book on me, and also, I suppose, as a craftsperson, just the challenges involved in shooting in such a small space, and also trying to frame a story as unusually structured as this in a movie, where you have two halves, split by the a sequence which would normally be the last. So yeah, combination of emotional intensity and creative challenge, I think.
It's also such a change of pace from your last movie, Frank. So wildly different kind of material. Was that a part of it? Just trying to stretch yourself as a filmmaker and try different kinds of material?
Yeah, I suppose partially yes, but actually, when I look at it now, there are, as often happens in these things, real similarities. Frank is
Mhm.
a person in clothes who kind of eventually breaks out and has to try to deal with the world in a more, I suppose, conventional way than he's used to. And in the situation of Ma and Jack, they are also contained and have to break out and deal with the intensity of that. But yeah, tonally extremely different, and the craft of filmmaking is something that I'm constantly uh, interested in, and I think the other thing that links the two movies is the degree of challenge involved in wrangling something so unusual in both cases. That I think is the thing that drew me. But for me, it's always a very, very instinctual response to material or to idea that I have that makes me want to do it. And it's only ever afterwards that I sit back and can see either links or contrasts.
Well, let's talk about some of the challenges of this movie because, as you said, it is divided into these two halves. The first half of the movie all takes place within this one four-walled room, which has to be a director's nightmare. Um, I'm wondering, when you first read that, were you thinking, how in the world am I going to make this cinematic, you know?
Yeah, I did. I had all those thoughts, and I think at the same time, while I was reading the novel, I just had strong flashes of images that felt really great to me. Just their two faces close together. It's just the kind of the texture that you could still find even in such a tiny place. And it's always a question of focus and of scale and of what you attend to. And I suppose I hoped that that attention and that focus would somehow carry us through the first half of the movie. And maybe as we approach shooting, the fear that it would be brutal, difficult, kind of, and that we would be fighting a kind of repetitive pattern that would be impossible to break out of. All of those fears definitely took hold. But then I started working with Danny Cohen, the DP, and Ethan Tobin, the designer, and we started experimenting and getting ourselves into the head of the little boy and remembering just how fascinating detail can be when you're that age, and how elastic scale is. I mean, you can become fascinated as a kid with some tiny object for quite a while. And as we started to shoot it, it just the room kept kind of giving. I mean, it kept being interesting. It didn't stop being interesting. It was hard. I mean, it was physically hard. It felt like, we were playing some insane kind of human jigsaw puzzle, trying to get the entire crew in and deal with the kids as well, with the actor as well, and with Jake and Brie. But aesthetically, it actually ended up being pretty exciting, very counterintuitive, but that's the way it felt.
Yeah, it was interesting how in the first half of that movie you really play with the dimensions of this space. I mean, it really hit me, not to give anything away for anybody who hasn't seen the movie, but in the last scene of the movie when you sort of see what the room actually looks like, it was just surprising to me the way that you played with the dimensions through the use of lenses and camera placement. And
Sure. It's funny. It's also just that we didn't ever give people a kind of objective. Okay, this is where they are opening. We just found ourselves, deliberately made it so that we found ourselves. The audience found themselves in the middle of the lives that are being led there, and it's like your own experience, I think, or the experience mirrors Jack's. The audience becomes so invested in those characters and so compelled by the story that it is, although physically very small, emotionally very big. I mean, that first half, and I think that's probably maybe true of the movie as a whole. It's an emotionally, it's a pretty big movie. Um, but when you return to the room after you've been outside, it's a bit like going back to your elementary school. As an adult, you don't. The dimensions are the same. Your eyes are still, the geometry is the same, but just psychologically somehow it doesn't have the same significance and it feels small. And so we didn't really, I mean, okay, we, in the way that the story works and in the way that we attended to the story in the first 45 minutes, the room takes on this kind of this weight, but we didn't like cheat, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
We never pulled a wall out and brought the camera further back. We didn't shoot on super wide lenses. We were usually within a kind of normal range, but just by somehow being with the boy and allowing the audience to drift into his way of seeing things, it had the effect of expanding the space.
hmm Right. So then in the second half of the movie, uh, almost a completely different kind of film. And yet I felt in some instances, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but I felt the same kind of feeling of claustrophobia a lot in some
Yeah,
of the visuals.
yeah, that
Can you
was
talk a bit about that?
intentional. Yeah, I mean, what we found was that the way to think about the film was like it's sort of like two interiors split with a big kind of an action sequence, very
Mhm.
peculiar shape. And the second interior, although it's like they're not actually imprisoned in it, it's a biggish house. It's, if anything, sometimes more claustrophobic than the first half. And that's the interesting reversal in the story as well, which is that we expect, I think, the escape to be the catharsis, and that's going to be, that the problems are finished. But really, the real task of rebuilding their relationship and finding a way to live out in the world, it really begins in the second half. And yeah, so there were lots. We were always playing with that sense of containment versus liberation at every point in the film, and really deciding what kind of emphasis to give in a given scene.
hmm It's true. I mean, the second half of the movie really is it's like the scene at the end of the movie that you never see, after all this horrible stuff has happened to the characters, they just go on with their lives happily without ever having to readjust to life. Um,
That's right.
so I want to talk about the actors in the movie. Brie Larson, what made her right for this part?
She, I saw her first of all in Short Term 12. That's where I kind of realized what a great actor she is. And then when I met her, there was she had a lot of things that were just great for us. Um, she's fiercely intelligent. She's got a really great natural understanding of story and storytelling. So as soon as I started talking to her, it became this really interesting conversation that I didn't want to end, and that's a really good sign. Um, she's also very warm, and we knew that we would need um, an actress who could form a relationship with a small kid. You know, it's very
Hmm.
important that she be able to um, be natural with him so that he would feel comfortable. And so she had that natural warmth and yeah, just a kind of a, a real empathy for the character. And yeah, it was a just a really wonderfully lucky meeting that led to a performance which I think people are rightly, blown away by.
Hmm. And then, of course, you have this incredible kid, Jacob Tremblay. I can only imagine how many people you must have seen for that role, or maybe he was the only one, for all I know. Um, what about him made him right for the part?
Um, we searched through a tremendous number of kids, just like you said. Um, he's a great actor, and he happens to be 8 years old. Well, he's 7 when we started and turned 8.
Mhm.
Um, Great poise, great presence. Somehow knows how to be, or has that instinctive, um, sort of ease in front of a camera. And crucially also adores acting. I mean, so that it is not a chore for him. He bounced in every day. He desperately wanted to do this, and this kind of enthusiasm carried him through what was a pretty tough shoot. Um, uh, but yeah, just I mean, it's hard to find talented people when they're grown up, even though they already, in the way of things, will have come to the fore. But finding a little boy who happens to have that extraordinary and rare gift, it was a tough call, but um, very many kids who could have done that.
Hmm. And the relationship between the two of them is so great. I mean, it feels very natural and real. I'm curious how you, as a director, helped to build that relationship, facilitate that.
Um, well, some very simple things. I mean, apart from choosing the right people, we got them together much earlier than normal. I mean, rehearsal is a pretty rare thing in movies, but we had about 4 weeks with Jake, and Brie in Toronto. Not doing formal rehearsal, not putting a lot of pressure on particularly on him, but just allowing them to be together. We also built the set uh, early so that we could hang out on it, so that Jake could get used to it, so that they could sit there and make some of those drawings together and make those toys and mobiles together that you see in the movie. So
Mhm.
it was about time and about creating a safe environment and a kind of trusting environment, and then doing very targeted work, particularly with Jake, just to get him into the kind of, just to calibrate the energy and the presence, so that he would feel right in that space. Time and support ultimately are the things that I think I gave them.
Mhm. You can tell. I mean, one of my favorite sequences in the film is the very first scene where it's like your first day, our first day in the room, but it's the day of his birthday, and you feel the entire span of one day within, I think it's about 15, 20 minutes or something like that. I might be wrong. Um,
Yeah. um so you're breaking up slightly, but I think I got that.
okay. Um,
Yeah, that early sequence. Yeah, I mean, it's quite efficient, really, if you think about it, because there is one day, one straightforward day, which I think, yeah, I think was our chance to feel the passage of life, and to get a sense of what the rituals and routines of their lives were. And we shot that right at the beginning, because we shot more or less sequentially. So it did take a day or two to get Jake relaxed, especially in front of a crew. But yeah, I think all that work we did in advance really paid off there, because he trusted her, he felt okay, he trusted me, and it allowed us to kind of, I think, represent something that felt real, normal, and routine.
mhm. And what's really great about it is, I mean, I walked into the movie not really knowing anything about it because I wanted to be surprised by it. And so for the first part of the movie, you're watching it like, okay, what are the circumstances of this? And you slowly start to figure them out. Can you talk about creating that sense of mystery in the first half and revealing information bit by bit?
Yeah, well, I generally like as a director to sort of assume the persona of somebody that doesn't fully have full access to the facts. In other words, the director should appear to be searching rather than presenting a pre-digested situation. And that's that approach also suited the the kind of drama here, uh, because it was important, I think, that we emphasized how normal this life was for these
Mhm.
characters. And so by just dropping ourselves in with them and just sort of almost naively, as if naively tracking what they were doing in that morning, and then only subtly allowing these cues and clues to come in. It for start, it makes the audience feel like they're discovering the reality of the situation, which is always much more powerful than you kind of preparing to tell them. But also, I think it's more emotionally affecting as you realize the context of this series of what appear to be kind of ordinary domestic routines and how extraordinary and extreme the situation is. So that decision to allow him to flow in very slowly, I think, was an important an important one, and did kind of ultimately intensify the drama as you finally understand it.
What's extraordinary too is that you're dealing with this rather unpleasant subject material, but it never feels exploitive or like it's it's hard to watch, but it's never like um, distasteful, I guess is the word that I'm trying to get out.
Yeah.
Was that a challenge?
Yes, it was, because in the book I think Emma has the advantage of using the boy's voice. I've got you there. Sorry.
Okay.
She has the advantage of using the boy's voice, and that can preserve her from having to tell you certain things because you only hear what he chooses to tell you. In the movie, we always knew that we were going to be filming in this place, and unless we cheated and made it much nicer than it was, um, then I think sorry, my all my
Oh, it's okay.
then at that point you sort of you know that you're going to be seeing this stuff for real, and it's not as easy to filter it. But I think the calculation we made was that still, by playing a lot on the face of the boy, by seeing the degree to which he relishes the things that they're doing, by feeling his enjoyment of the games that they play, and also by limiting our experience of old Nick and that dimension of things because we're with Jack, we're in the wardrobe, we're not in the room, we don't see anything. Combination of that kind of that device which separates us from the darker stuff, and also just the trusting that the exuberant presence of the boy will do a lot. I think we prevented it from sort of falling in under the weight of the darkness of the situation. But that was probably the aspect of it that was most risky, because there is the fear that when you open the door to that stuff, no matter how much you try to keep the focus on the boy and his experience, the fear was that would overwhelm. And I think it's great that we were right, that it didn't, that we were able still to preserve something of his hopefulness and his experience of what this place was, rather than what we as adults would immediately focus on.
The last shot of the movie is really powerful too. I just want to ask you about that. What was the thinking behind the final image of the movie?
Um, well, just the idea. I mean, it's a simple thing, but just the idea that they're walking away. I mean, that I suppose that what the movie says is that they have a future, that they somehow at, after that last scene, that's the end of something. It's the end of something really dark, and we can feel the beginning of something more hopeful. And I think we felt that at various points through that last 10, 15 minutes, but as a pair, we can see that that relationship is strong again. But the idea, for interesting enough, you know, somebody had said to me, well, what about snow, you know, as they walk away? What about something as kind of cleansing as that, or as, and I thought, well, you know, it goes, instinctively, I tend to avoid that sort of imagery because I think it's maybe too easy. And then as we started shooting that shot and as we craned up, it started to snow.
Oh
So
wow.
I thought, well, I you know, it's the same image, but it was a gift, and I'm not going to turn it down. So that was quite an amazing moment. It suddenly began to snow as they walked away. But there are bare trees. It's not a pretty garden. So I think it's a hard earned image of hope rather than a kind of off the shelf pretty picture. And I would hope that the whole film is like that. I hope that that the life affirming aspect of the movie is a real one, and it's not a kind of a cheap device.
Well, it certainly brought me to tears.
I'm
Thank,
glad to hear that.
you're welcome, of course. Thank